Whispers of the Wendigo. I always dismissed the old tales my grandfather spun by the fireside as mere folklore. Stories crafted to entertain and instill caution in restless children. Growing up in the quiet town of Pinecrest, nestled deep within the dense forests of northern Illinois, I never believed that these legends held any truth. That was until I stumbled upon the forgotten diary of Swift Runner, a man whose actions in the winter of 1879 would forever change my understanding of the darkness that can reside within us all. My name is Jacob Thompson, a historian with a fascination for unsolved mysteries and the macabre. Pinecrest was the perfect place for my research, its history rich with stories that never quite fit into the neat narratives of textbooks. But nothing intrigued me more than the tale of Swift Runner and the creature known as the Wendigo. The legend of the Wendigo originated from the oral traditions of the Algonquin tribes, describing a malevolent spirit or creature embodying insatiable greed and hunger. It was said that during harsh winters, when food was scarce and desperation set in, some individuals could transform into Wendigos after committing acts of cannibalism. These beings were cursed to wander the wilderness, driven by an endless hunger that could never be satiated. In the winter of 1879, Swift Runner, a respected member of the Pinecrest community, found himself facing an unimaginable ordeal. The harshest winter in recorded memory had descended upon the region, with temperatures plummeting and snowdrifts reaching feet in height. Crop failures and livestock deaths had left the town on the brink of starvation. Swift, a stoic man known for his resilience, struggled to keep his family alive as the days turned into weeks without sustenance. Desperation gnawed at him, and the whispers of the Wendigo, mere superstitions to many, began to take root in his mind. The diary I discovered in the attic of the old Thompson house detailed his descent into madness. Entries became erratic, filled with pleas for help and descriptions of haunting visions. January 12, 1879. The cold is relentless. We have little to eat, and my mind begins to fracture. Shadows move in the periphery of my vision, whispering my name. I fear the Wendigo is near. February 3, 1879. I cannot bear the hunger any longer. Tonight, I must act. For the sake of my children, I must sacrifice our sanity. The final entry was the most harrowing. February 10, 1879. It happened. The hunger was unbearable. I took their lives to survive, becoming something unrecognizable. The Wendigo inside me is now free. May the spirits forgive me. Swift Runner vanished that night, leaving behind a scene of unimaginable horror. His family's bodies were found months later, preserved by the unforgiving cold, their remains untouched by time. The townsfolk whispered that the Wendigo had claimed him, and ever since, Pinecrest had been wary of the deep woods during winter. Decades passed, and the story of Swift Runner became a dark chapter in Pinecrest's history. Skeptics scoffed at the idea of the Wendigo, but the memory of that winter lingered, especially among the older generations. As I delved deeper into Swift's story, I couldn't help but feel a connection, a chilling sense that the darkness Swift faced was not entirely his own. It was during one particularly bitter winter that the legends began to stir again. Snowstorms of unprecedented ferocity battered Pinecrest, isolating the town from the rest of the world. Food supplies dwindled, and the same desperation that had driven Swift to madness now gripped the community once more. The townspeople, already on edge, began reporting strange sightings. Shadowy figures moving swiftly through the trees and eerie whispers carried by the howling wind. One night, as I pored over Swift's diary in the dim light of my study, a knock echoed through the house. Startled, I opened the door to find an old man, his eyes sunken and his clothes tattered from the relentless cold. "Are you Jacob Thompson?" he rasped, his voice barely audible over the storm outside. "Yes, that's me. Can I help you?" I asked, sensing an urgency in his demeanor. The man stepped inside, shivering violently. "I have seen it. The Wendigo. It's back." My heart raced. Could the legend truly be resurfacing? Or was it the collective fear of a starving town playing tricks on our minds? He handed me a weathered photograph of Swift Runner and his family, taken before their tragic demise. I was there that winter. I saw him transform, became something monstrous. If it comes back, we must be ready. Determined to uncover the truth and protect my community, I embarked on a mission to understand the true nature of the Wendigo. I reached out to local historians, consulted indigenous elders, and delved into old folklore that detailed rituals and protections against malevolent spirits. One evening, as the storm reached its peak, the manifestations became undeniable. The lights in my house flickered violently, and the temperature plummeted as an oppressive darkness settled in. Through the windows, I saw the shadowy figures prowling the outskirts of town, their presence a constant reminder of the hunger that never ceased. The old man returned, guiding me to the heart of Pinecrest, where the townspeople had gathered in a desperate attempt to ward off the darkness. We performed ancient rituals, invoking the spirits of the land to protect us from the Wendigos' wrath. The air was thick with tension as we chanted, the howling wind now sounding like the anguished cries of the damned. Suddenly, a piercing scream shattered the night. The townspeople froze, eyes wide with terror as the shadowy figures surged forward, their forms twisting and contorting into grotesque shapes. The Wendigo had taken on a physical presence, its eyes burning with an insatiable hunger. I stood my ground, clutching Swift's diary, a relic of the past that held the key to our survival. "You cannot have us," I shouted, my voice breaking. "We honor your memory, but we will not succumb to your hunger." The creature lunged, its form shifting and warping as it advanced. Panic erupted as people scattered, trying to escape the onslaught of shadows. I held up the diary, chanting the protective incantations I had learned, feeling a surge of ancient power flow through me. The Wendigo recoiled, its form flickering like a dying flame. The townspeople joined in, their voices rising in unison, creating a barrier of light and sound that pushed the darkness back. The creature let out a final, ear-piercing scream before dissipating into the night, the oppressive darkness lifting as quickly as it had descended. Exhausted but victorious, we stood amidst the remnants of our battle, the storm subsiding and the first light of dawn breaking through the clouds. Pinecrest was saved, but the memory of that night lingered, a haunting reminder of the thin line between legend and reality. In the aftermath, we vowed to honor Swift Runner and his family, ensuring that their story was never forgotten. The Wendigo became a symbol of the darkness that can consume us in times of desperation, a reminder to cherish what we have and seek help before the shadows take hold. Years later, as I sit by the fireplace in my home, the winter winds whisper through the pines, and I reflect on the events that shaped our lives. The diary of Swift Runner remains a treasured artifact, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit and the lengths we will go to survive. But sometimes, on the coldest nights, I hear the faint echoes of those anguished whispers, carried by the wind. I wonder if the Wendigo still prowls the forests of Pinecrest, a restless spirit forever bound by its insatiable hunger. And I remind myself that some legends are born from truth, and some darkness lies just beyond the edge of our understanding, waiting to reclaim what was once taken. So, if you ever find yourself wandering the snowy forests of northern Illinois during the dead of winter, listen closely to the whispers in the wind. Respect the stories of the past. Honor the memories of those who have been lost. And remember that some spirits never rest, forever searching for peace in the shadows beneath the pines. Story number 2. The Frozen Girl. Winter in Willow Creek was unforgiving. Nestled deep within the vast expanse of Alaska, the small village was a tight-knit community where everyone knew each other's names, birthdays, and secrets. Life moved at a slower pace here, dictated by the rhythm of the seasons and the merciless grip of the cold. But the winter of 1994 brought something dark and chilling that would forever change our perception of the world around us. My name is Daniel Harris, and I've lived all my 17 years in Willow Creek. I was 17 when Emily Thompson disappeared, and I've never forgotten the fear that gripped our hearts that winter. Emily was the daughter of the town's only doctor, a bright and spirited girl with a smile that could light up the darkest days. Her disappearance was the first time our community faced something so terrifying, something that couldn't be explained by logic or reason. It was late December, and the snow had been falling relentlessly for weeks. The ground was buried under several feet of white, and the wind howled through the pines like a mournful cry. Emily had decided to take a solo trip into the forest, seeking solace from the pressures of school and her responsibilities at home. She was an experienced hiker, always careful and prepared. But that day, something went terribly wrong. We first noticed Emily was missing when her mother, Dr. Thompson, returned home late one evening to find her daughter's trail supplies untouched. Panic set in quickly as we organized search parties, combing through the dense forest with flashlights piercing the inky darkness. Hours turned into days, and hope began to wane. By mid-January, Emily's body was discovered near an ancient pine, perfectly preserved in the frigid snow, clutching a faded photograph of her family. Her eyes were still open, staring blankly into the void, as if she was frozen in time. The sight of Emily's lifeless eyes haunted me. There was something unnerving about how serene she looked, as if she had simply drifted into a deep, eternal sleep. The townsfolk whispered about the Wendigo legends, ancient tales of malevolent spirits that preyed on the living during the harshest winters. But I didn't believe in such things until the nights started to change. Shortly after Emily's body was found, strange phenomena began to occur in Willow Creek. It started with subtle signs: flickering lights in the Thompson household, doors that creaked open and shut on their own, and unexplained cold spots that sent shivers down my spine. First, we dismissed them as remnants of the search parties or the natural settling of the old houses. But then came the whispers. On the coldest nights, when the wind was howling outside and the snow was piled high against the windows, we began to hear faint voices carried by the breeze. They were soft, almost indistinguishable, like the remnants of a conversation that had been lost to time. Some villagers swore they heard Emily's voice calling out for help, her whispers echoing through the forest. Others reported feeling an overwhelming sense of being watched, the air turning icy cold as they walked past the graves. I was particularly affected by these occurrences, as Emily's classmate and someone who had shared many afternoons hiking with her. Her disappearance hit me hard. I started spending nights by my window, hoping to catch a glimpse of her or hear her voice again. It was during one of these sleepless nights that I encountered her first. I was sitting alone in my room, the wind rattling the shutters and the fire casting long shadows on the walls, when I heard it, a soft, sorrowful whisper that seemed to seep through the walls. Daniel! The name was unmistakable. My heart raced as I looked around the room, eyes wide with fear. There was no one there, only the storm raging outside. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling that Emily was still with us, her spirit lingering in the cold embrace of the forest. Determined to find answers, I began researching the history of Willow Creek, delving into old records and speaking with the elders. What I uncovered was a tapestry of sorrow and tragedy, far deeper than I had imagined. Maplewood Cemetery, where Emily was buried, was one of the oldest sites in the region, with graves dating back to the early 1800s. Many of those interred there had met untimely deaths, some victims of accidents, others of mysterious circumstances. The cemetery was said to be cursed, a place where restless spirits roamed, unable to find peace. The legends spoke of apparitions seen during the darkest nights, and the ground being cold enough to freeze a man's soul. As I delved deeper, I discovered a pattern. Every few decades, a tragedy struck Willow Creek, coinciding with the harshest winters. Emily's death in 1994 was the latest in a long line of sorrow that seemed to plague our town. The whispers I heard were not just random sounds. They were the voices of those who had been lost, their spirits trapped between the living and the dead. forever searching for closure. One night, fueled by a mix of fear and determination, I decided to venture into the forest alone. I wanted to confront whatever was haunting our town, to give Emily and the others the peace they deserved. Armed with a flashlight and Emily's photograph, I trudged through the knee-deep snow, the cold biting at my skin with every step. The forest was eerily silent, the only sound being the crunch of my boots on the snow and the distant howl of the wind. As I approached the old pine where Emily was found, the air grew colder, the darkness pressing in on me. I felt a presence, an invisible force watching my every move, my breath visible in the frigid air. I stopped in front of her grave, holding the photograph tightly. "Emily," I whispered, tears welling up in my eyes. "I'm sorry we couldn't find you sooner. I'm here now. Please, let me help you." Suddenly, the temperature dropped further, and a spectral figure emerged from the shadows. Emily stood before me, her eyes still open, staring into nothingness. The sight of her was both heartbreaking and terrifying, her form shimmering in the moonlight like frost on a windowpane. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice filled with sorrow. "Help us. Set us free." Before I could respond, the air around us seemed to come alive with the voices of the lost souls. Shadows danced among the trees, their forms flickering like candle flames in the wind. The ground beneath me trembled as if the forest itself was reacting to our confrontation. "I need to find peace," Emily continued, her voice echoing through the trees. "We are trapped, unable to move on because of the pain and suffering we endured." Determined to help, I recalled the legends I had read about. To free the spirits, we needed to acknowledge their suffering, honor their memories, and help them find closure. I took a deep breath and began to speak, recounting the stories of the lost souls, their lives, and their tragic ends. I offered prayers and promises to remember their stories, to ensure they were never forgotten. As I spoke, the oppressive darkness began to lift, the whispers turning into soft sighs of relief. Emily's figure started to fade, her eyes reflecting a newfound peace. The shadows receded, and the cold that had gripped the forest began to warm slightly, as if a weight had been lifted. "Thank you," Emily whispered one last time, her form dissolving into the night air. "We can finally rest." Exhausted but relieved, I made my way back to the village, the first light of dawn breaking through the clouds. The storm had passed, leaving behind a serene and peaceful morning. The forest seemed calmer, the shadows less menacing, and the oppressive cold was gone. When I returned, the townspeople noticed a change. The strange phenomena had ceased, the whispers silenced, and the air felt lighter. Emily's disappearance was no longer a source of fear but a story of redemption and closure. The spirits had found peace, and so had our community. Years have passed since that fateful winter, and life in Willow Creek has returned to its tranquil state. The memory of Emily and the lost souls remains a poignant reminder of the thin veil between the living and the dead, and the enduring power of compassion and understanding. Sometimes, on the coldest winter nights, I still feel a chill in the air and catch a faint whisper on the wind, a gentle reminder that some spirits linger, grateful for the peace we helped them find. But no longer do we fear the shadows of the forest. Instead, we honor the memories of those who came before us, ensuring that their stories are never forgotten. Willow Creek stands as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the mysterious forces that shape our lives in ways we can never fully comprehend. So, if you ever find yourself wandering through the snowy woods of Alaska during the dead of winter, listen closely to the whispers carried by the wind. Respect the stories of the past. Honor the memories of those who have been lost, and understand that some spirits seek only acknowledgement to finally rest in peace. For in the heart of the frozen wilderness, the echoes of the past remain, forever entwined with our present, ensuring that their legacy lives on. Story number 3. Echoes of the Forgotten. I never planned to become a ghost hunter. Growing up in the small town of Timber Ridge in the northwestern United States, I was more likely to be found hiking the trails with my dog or tinkering with old radios in the garage. But the winter of 1961 changed everything, pulling me into a nightmare that blurred the lines between reality and the supernatural. My name is Jack Mitchell, and I was 17 when Mary Morris disappeared. Mary was my high school sweetheart, a spirited girl with a passion for adventure that matched my own. We decided to embark on a winter expedition into the rugged wilderness that bordered our town, seeking thrills and the solace that only nature could provide. Little did we know, that trip would become our last. It was early December, and the first snow had already blanketed the mountains. Mary had always been drawn to the untouched beauty of the snow-covered peaks, and I admired her fearless spirit. We set out with a map, some supplies, and the unwavering confidence that comes with youth. The plan was simple: hike to a remote ridge, set up camp, and return before the worst of the storm hit. The first few days were perfect. We trekked through pristine forests, crossed frozen streams, and marveled at the silence that only deep winter could bring. The nights were cold but serene, the stars piercing the darkness like diamonds scattered across velvet. Mary kept a journal, documenting our journey and capturing the fleeting moments of beauty that surrounded us. But as we ventured deeper into the wilderness, the weather began to change. The snow grew heavier, and the winds picked up, turning from gentle breezes into fierce gales that howled through the trees. One evening, as we set up camp near a dense thicket of pines, a blizzard descended upon us with little warning. The temperature plummeted, and visibility dropped to near zero. We hurried to secure our tents and stoke the fire, but the storm showed no signs of relenting. We huddled together in our makeshift shelter, the wind battering the fabric and the snow piling higher around us. Mary tried to keep our spirits up, recounting stories and singing softly to drown out the storm's fury, but the howling wind masked her voice, leaving us in a suffocating silence broken only by the creaking of our tents and the relentless pounding of the snow. The next morning, the storm had subsided, leaving behind a world transformed by ice and snow. We emerged from our shelter to find our campsite nearly buried under a foot of snow. Determined to continue our journey, we pushed forward, but the landscape had become a labyrinth of white, each direction looking identical to the last. The map was now useless, the landmarks obscured by the relentless snow. Days turned into nights as we struggled to find our way back. Food supplies dwindled, and our spirits began to falter under the weight of exhaustion and fear. Mary remained a beacon of hope, her determination unwavering despite our dire circumstances. But then, one night, everything changed. We were trekking through a particularly treacherous pass when Mary slipped on an icy patch, twisting her ankle badly. Pain shot through her leg, and she collapsed onto the snow. Unable to move, I tried to lift her, but the weight was too much. Desperation set in as we realized the severity of our situation. We needed to find shelter and ration our remaining supplies if we were to survive. As night fell, the temperature plummeted further, and a thick fog rolled in, enveloping the mountains in a ghostly veil. We set up a makeshift camp near a fallen tree, Mary struggling to keep warm despite her injury. It was then that we heard it, the faintest sound, like distant screams carried by the wind. At first, I dismissed it as the echoes of our own fears, but the sound grew louder, more distinct, filling the night with an unbearable sense of dread. Mary's eyes darted around, fear etched on her face. "Do you hear that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. "It's probably just the wind," I replied, though my voice betrayed my uncertainty. But the screams persisted, echoing through the mountains with an otherworldly resonance. They seemed to come from all around us, surrounding our camp in a circle of anguish and terror. I reached out to Mary, but she recoiled, her eyes wide with fear. "There's something out there," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Something watching us." The night was a blur of fear and confusion. We tried to stay warm and keep our spirits up. But the presence we felt was oppressive, pressing down on us with an unrelenting force. Sleep eluded me as I lay awake, staring into the darkness, waiting for the screams to return. Days later, after what felt like an eternity, we stumbled upon an old cabin buried in the snow. It was dilapidated, the wood weathered and covered in ice, but it offered a semblance of shelter from the storm. We took refuge inside, hoping to find some warmth and comfort, but the cabin held its own horrors. The air was thick with an icy chill, and the walls seemed to close in on us, suffocating in their silence. Mary remained awake, her eyes haunted by the visions of the screams and the unseen presence that stalked us. I tried to reassure her, but my own fear gnawed at me, eroding my confidence with each passing night. One evening, as the wind howled outside, Mary began to speak in a voice that wasn't her own. "They're here, Jack. They never leave." I turned to her, confusion and fear battling in my mind. "What do you mean? Who's here?" The room grew colder, and the shadows seemed to dance with a life of their own. Mary's eyes glazed over, and she pointed towards the window, her voice a mere whisper. "Look outside." Reluctantly, I approached the window, the chill biting at my skin. Through the frosted glass, I saw them, shadowy figures moving swiftly through the snow, their forms indistinct but undeniably human. Their eyes glowed with a sinister light, and their presence exuded malice and hunger. The screams had become their calls, a beacon for the restless spirits that roamed the mountains, forever trapped by their own torment. "We need to leave," I said, grabbing Mary's arm. "We can't stay here." But as we attempted to flee, the cabin seemed to warp around us, the windows melting into the walls, and the door refusing to budge. The spirits pressed in, their whispers turning into screams of agony and rage. Mary's condition worsened, her body shaking uncontrollably as the spirits tormented her, feeding off our fear and desperation. In a final, desperate attempt, I reached into my pack and pulled out the photograph Mary had been clutching, the last picture we took together before our expedition began. It was a simple family portrait, but in that moment, it became our only hope. I held the photo up to the spirits, reciting prayers and pleas for mercy, hoping to honor the memories of those lost souls and grant them the peace they sought. The air crackled with energy as the spirits reacted, their forms flickering like candle flames in the wind. The whispers grew louder, merging into a cacophony of sorrow and anger. Mary reached out to me, her eyes pleading for help. "Please, Jack, help us." With every ounce of strength I had left, I continued to chant, the photo held tightly in my hand. The spirits began to dissipate, their forms fading into the night as the oppressive chill lifted. The cabin seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, the walls returning to their original form and the door finally opening with a creak. We stumbled out into the snow, the first light of dawn breaking through the storm clouds. Exhausted and broken, we made our way back to Timber Ridge, our ordeal leaving scars that would never fully heal. The townsfolk listened in horror as we recounted our story, the legend of the Wendigo taking on a new chapter with our harrowing experience. Years later, the memory of that winter still haunts me. Mary and I moved away from Timber Ridge, seeking to escape the shadows that lingered in our minds. But the echoes of those screams and the presence of the restless spirits never left us, a constant reminder of the thin veil between life and death, reality and the supernatural. Sometimes, on the coldest winter nights, I find myself gazing into the darkness, listening for the faintest whispers carried by the wind. I think of Mary and the souls we encountered, forever trapped in the frozen wilderness. Their stories a cautionary tale of hunger and desperation that transcends time. But there are moments when the boundary between the living and the dead feels perilously thin, and I can't help but wonder if the spirits of Willow Creek still roam the mountains, searching for peace and solace amidst the endless snow. The legend of the Wendigo remains a dark shadow over our town, A reminder that some horrors are born from the depths of human desperation and the unforgiving embrace of nature. So, if you ever find yourself wandering the snowy trails of the northwestern wilderness during the dead of winter, listen closely to the whispers in the wind. Respect the stories of those who came before you. Honor their memories, and understand that some spirits seek only acknowledgement to finally rest in peace. For in the heart of the frozen wilds, the echoes of the forgotten linger, forever entwined with the shadows beneath the pines.